Hey everyone, welcome back to Bulletproof Selling. This is Sean Rhodes. I'm the Chief Sales Sergeant here at Bulletproof Selling and author of the book Bulletproof Selling, a guide for systemizing sales on the battlefield of business. Here at Bulletproof Selling, we believe that hope is not a sales strategy. And so we're here multiple times a week, often enough, to help you as a salesperson, as a business owner, remove hope from how you sell. Now, whether you've been in business a day or you've been in business for 30 years, chances are hope creeps in little by little, day by day. Every time that we hope that a deal is going to close, or hope that that person's going to return our phone call, or hope that business is going to continue to show up in the volume that it's been showing up in, that's where hope enters the picture. And we learned on the battlefield that hope is not a strategy that we wanted to use there. So we worked every day to identify exactly where hope was entering our plans, and we worked to replace it. So my work across teams in the U.S. Marine Corps, Navy SEALs, Green Berets, the highest performers in the military, studying how they removed hope. And then now my work today is bringing that to you as a salesperson, helping you build those same systems. So every one of these shows, if you've just with us for the first time, you get to hear a system being built today that will help you remove hope from some aspect of your sales cycle. And over the years of doing this here at Bulletproof Selling, we've been able to have on some very cool people. Hall of Fame speakers, best-selling authors, men and women that are building companies, leading thriving teams, and leading sales teams around the world. Now, if you've been here for longer than a couple of minutes with us here at Bulletproof Selling, you know some of my favorite guests are my military veterans because they have a mindset that is already adapted to systems. So when they leave the military and they end up being in sales or they end up running a company, they're already applying systems to what they do. But we have a very unique guest with us today. Not just a military veteran, although he will be one soon. This is the first guest we've ever had at Bulletproof Selling who's still on active duty. That's right. Our guest today is an Army captain in the infantry on terminal leave. And in case you're not familiar with the military and what terminal leave means, it means that he's basically done with his enlistment, but he's taking all of those sick days that accrue that you haven't burned up yet, all the leave that he's built up, and he's going through that right now. So in May, he'll be a full-fledged civilian, just like the rest of us when we get out of the military, but he's doing something very unique in the world. He's already taking time while he's on active duty to build a company. And he's going to explain to us how we can better align our companies and our systems with our customers so that we can sell more, but more importantly, so that we can serve more. So without further ado, because I'm going to have a great time with this conversation, it's my pleasure to welcome on to Bulletproof Selling, Mr. Luke Cox. Luke, welcome, sir.
Sean, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. It was great to meet you at SHOT Show, and I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah, so I have to hear about it, man. It's so rare that people come out of the military already having founded a company that is growing at the rate that yours is. So talk to us a little bit about, one, where you found the time to do that, and what was the impetus, the motivation, the inception of this brand that you're running today?
Yeah, so it all started. I've really had a passion for trying to start a business for a long time and be interested in it. I had a bunch of side businesses when I was younger, even in high school, and coming up, and kind of fell out of that as I went through. I went to college, did the ROTC thing, commissioned into the Army. And the Army, the military in general is unique, right? Because it's either you have no time because you're just operation tempo is really high, or you find yourself with a lot of time where you're just sitting around waiting on the word, not doing much. And so I was a basic training company commander, and we got what's called the non-conduct. So our cycle didn't pick up because of recruiting or whatever. There wasn't enough trainees. And so I found myself with several months of like not really having to work very much, go hang out in the office. And so I'd been playing the social media game a little bit. One of my good buddies had leveraged his social media into a job. And I was one of these guys that didn't like social, didn't use it. And when I saw he was a platoon leader with me in the 101st. And as he transitioned out, he got a job based off of his Instagram account. And I was like, man, there's
Hmm.
something here and there's a real lever with this. And so I didn't know, and I just, started trying to learn it. And I knew I was passionate about hunting. And the three things that I did in life was I hunt, I lift, and I eat. And so I didn't have a grand design of building a company called that. It was just, building some promotion, telling the story of what I was doing with my hunting journey. And then once we picked up that non-conduct, I decided to try to do some branding. So I was working with other companies, doing some promotion on the side for them. And I was like, if I'm doing this for somebody else, I can do it for myself. It's going to be easy, right? Yeah, it's not very easy to start a company. So
No.
my first designs came on Microsoft PowerPoint on a government computer, and built those in clip art, and then kind of rolled with it, made some patches and started sewing them on hats. And it was pretty easy at first because I had a very predictable schedule as a basic training commander, and then I went straight to the schoolhouse, and then I went back to the line and was on staff officer, and then a company commander, and then it got a lot harder. And then there was a lot of sacrifices with the time. I was waking up at 4 a.m. to prep orders. So we started off as a lifestyle apparel company, and then my lunch breaks, I'd run to UPS and in the post office. Eventually, I had to bring on my wife, and then as my bandwidth increased, I had to bring more folks in. I deployed to Eastern Europe, and I was on reverse cycle basically from the States. I was waking up at 3 a.m., 2 a.m. to do
Yeah.
calls, and yeah. So the time thing, it's difficult, and it's a really hard balance, but it was definitely worth doing. And as I've come, closer to this transition, it's allowed me to make that leap because now I have something built and kind of ready to jump into full time.
Talk to us about what you've built, because a lot of entrepreneurs, especially for lifestyle apparel companies, they start just making stuff in their garage, shipping it out. Because every time I go to the post office, there's people just with stacks of envelopes, and I can tell this man or this woman's running a home-based business out of their garage right now, and that's where a lot of people start. You've transitioned a little beyond that, though, with what you've prepared, with what you're setting up. Talk to us about the vision of Hunt, Lift, Eat, and where you are in executing that vision right now.
Absolutely. So yeah, it started the exact same way that you just mentioned. I was in my attic, bought a sewing machine, an embroidery machine. I had no idea how to sew. I made patches with our little logo. I sewed them onto some blank hats, and then just started shipping them out from the house. And it was easy when it was one or two hats a week, and then that started to build. And I realized I needed to get some manufacturers because I learned very quickly that I didn't like sewing. I didn't want to be a seamstress for the rest of my life. So it just grew, and it's swelled. And I've been very fortunate to through our message, which is really we're a community-based organization across the board, and we've got three different tranches in which we kind of drive our revenue. We've got the lifestyle apparel, which is kind of the window dressing, and people like cool T-shirts, cool designs. Then we offer training programs, and that just came in from because of the nature of what the brand is. I had people asking us, "Hey, how do you train for the backcountry? How do you train to prepare for hunts?" And I'm kind of a bro science guy. I grew up in the gym, but I don't have any of the credentials. So I brought in one of my buddies from the Army who was working on all of his personal training stuff, and he built all of our programming. And so then we started offering programs, and we had a lot of folks that wanted to become, kind of the brand ambassador thing. And like I mentioned before, I had done that with other companies, and I really felt like something was missing from the equation. I was very transactional. Here's a discount. Here's some products. Go promote me. And I wanted to build an organization that was very community driven. And I'd seen so many of my peers, and then stories from folks that I look up to, and that with their transition, you have that that lost period where you don't have your tribe, you don't have a community, you don't have the people around you. And I knew fairly early on, I joked that I've been getting out of the Army for 8 years now, but that I wasn't going to
Hmm.
do this at least for the full 20. And so I wanted to, around something that I'm passionate about, which is fitness and hunting, bring in a core group of guys around me. And so we called that the team. And it was like some folks I met through Instagram that would live this lifestyle. And then my core guys that I grew up with, some of my cousins, we grew up hunting together, my friends from the Army that we all hunted together. And so once I had all this, demand to grow and bring people in, we decided to kind of flip the model on its head. And so we wanted to offer a lot more. So it's actually a paid membership, but we don't take that investment into our company lightly. And so we want to provide 10x value back to our members. So we do everything from educational seminars on hunting, fitness, nutrition, different tips and tactics. I do a mindset call where, similar to the stuff we're talking about here, I talk about growth mindset, building a vision for your life, living a purpose driven life, basic finance, like these things that a lot of us don't get taught as we're growing up. And I've just learned the lessons, most of them the hard way through the mistakes that I've made. I try to put that back into the community. We meet for in-person events. And I think that all these, these mental health issues that we're dealing with as a crisis, the veterans get a lot of the press, and it's obviously a really big issue, but I think it's just as bad, within the civilian community as well. And the best I can tell, I think it's boiled down to a lack of community and real true interactions, because we are tribal as a species. We're meant to be surrounded by like-minded people that push us to be better. And then a relationship with the, the natural world, the studies with what, it does, spending time in nature does to your brain chemistry. It's pretty, irrefutable at this point. And obviously with the hunting aspect, we're all about community and nature and being plugged in as part of, that ecosystem and that circle of life, from start to finish. There's a misconception about hunters that everybody just wants to go out there and kill. And most hunters, that's the least favorite part. It's everything leading up to it, the preparation, the time spent, taking care of your body, checking your equipment. And then from the military standpoint, the planning for that is also really tied in. It's, mission planning. It's the exact same process when you're doing a backcountry hunt. You're checking gear, you're doing route planning, you're actually doing, you're doing, preparation of the battlefield, looking at imagery and maps and planning different areas. So it's really, there's a cool translation there that a lot of vets find, some sort of familiarity as they go forward out of the transition. And so that's really what we have is this it's more of a community based around hunting, fitness, and the outdoors. And then we have different ways that we try to build revenue, because we are, we're not profitable yet, but we are a for-profit company, and we're trying to grow and be able to sustain ourselves and our families through what we're building here.
The amount of things that you've been able to line up, setting up an actual physical location, getting the states that you're moving into to support you financially in doing that. It's not just running a shop out of your garage anymore, which is something that I respected you, immediately so highly about, because, hey, you did this while you were on active duty. So for the salespeople that are out there, for the entrepreneurs that are out there, something that we all struggle with, whether we've been in business for a day, it's our first day on the job as a new salesperson, or whether we've been running this shop for 30 years, it's getting our customers to align with what it is that we are selling. I find a lot of the work most salespeople do is in explaining how what this thing is that I sell is going to help make your life more, better, or different. The folks that are showing up to your brand, though, they're already in the orbit of what you do. So there's a lower barrier to entry to have to convince them to turn over money so that you can sell to them and you can serve them, help grow their lives, give them better hunting experiences. Where do you find in the entrepreneurs that you've been able to meet, the businesses you've seen succeed and the ones you've seen fail, where do you see those folks, those salespeople, relying on hope that their customers are going to just magically understand the value, the brand, the mystique of what it is that they're selling?
Yeah, and we talked about this prior, but you hear it in the military all the time, like hope's not a course of action. And so preparation and planning, I think, is the most important thing on the front end. And I'll get to, the interactions with the customers, but one, if you're transitioning out of the military or you're working a corporate job that you hate and you're trying to move into the entrepreneurship, you got to develop the skills internally for yourself before you can make that leap. It's not just education. Going to grad school, getting an MBA, whatever, that's great, but there's specific skills. And so I study entrepreneurs across all facets. And I think the hunting industry is actually behind the power curve, especially in the digital space. So I really study folks, the top tier in the hunting industry, and then from a bunch of others. And so it's preparation. It's constantly evolving and learning and having that growth mindset to know that you can't stay stagnant, and moving forward on your own skills, whether that's in wherever, in identifying your weaknesses. You have to look, like, some people aren't good face to face. They're not good talking because they're uncomfortable in that situation. Well, you got to put yourself out there and get over it. If you're trying to move into any sort of entrepreneurship or any sort of sales, because it's all about the interpersonal connection. And I think a lot of that, in going to, the next phase is, I think it's a lot less about trying to sell, and it's more about finding common ground and getting to know your customer, and then finding out what their problems are and working to solve problems more than it is to actually sell a product, because that will happen organically if they get to know who you are as a person, your value set, and relate on that level versus just trying to get that product out there. There's a quote that I heard really recently that I've been regurgitating to my team a lot. It's like, don't destroy the empire chasing a pot of gold. And I think that's so important. It's really easy to make some fast cash. Once you start thinking in this mindset, you see opportunity everywhere, but you have to have that clear vision of what you want your company or your sales team or whatever to grow into, and then stick to that process as you build the plan. And the plan's going to evolve and change, but don't chase the fast dollars. If you're going to sell an inferior product or provide an inferior service, it's better to make less money now so you can make exponentially more money long term as you build through it, and really focus on that interpersonal relationship, because that's what all this is about. And our company is built on a foundation of people. It's not built on, systems or processes, and all that's important. It's very important. It's not built on the digital space. It's not social. It's not, that those are all just the tools. The people are what really drives it. And if you build that team and they have that same value set, then when you're talking to your customers and your consumers, it becomes very easy and organic, and it's less about the sale and more about the relationship.
So it sounds like then you are putting your culture as the foundation of everything else. Not
Yes.
only the culture of your team, but the culture that you have with the people that you're interacting with as potential customers. So let's actually build a sales system around this, because I think any salesperson could benefit from it, whether they're selling software or whether they're selling lifestyle apparel. The more that we find common ground with the people that we're selling to, the faster they build rapport with us, the faster they build that trusting relationship with us, the more we can offer them to help them achieve their goals, personally or professionally. So when we were in the military, and you still are in the military, I use the term, were a lot, past tense. This is, a couple of weeks. That's all you got left, man. And then you'll be out of it. But every new system that we put into use on the battlefield removes more hope from how we operate. And you think of the way that we were fighting in the Revolutionary War compared to the way that they taught you and I to fight. World of difference, because technology changed. We learned things. We built new systems. So we love acronyms in the military, as I'm sure you remember. Here on Bulletproof Selling, to build sales systems, we use this acronym TRIM, T-R-I-M, because we're trimming hope away with every new system. This is a pretty foundational system, so I think it's probably going to be important that people pay attention to this one. The T in TRIM, what this acronym is, the trigger. If I'm attempting to build better alignment with my customers, Luke, where do I trigger this system? Is it the first time I get in a sales conversation? Is it when I'm identifying the type of customers I want to go after? Is it when I'm, looking at the purpose of my company or the purpose of what it is that I sell? Where do I trigger a sales system that helps me better align with my customers?
I think the first thing that you should do as an organization and as a person is define your core values. I think that's
Mm,
really important. And it's something that gets overlooked a lot because what will happen is, and it happens in the military, and I've seen it throughout my career. I mean, through COVID, through everything else, is if you don't have a clearly defined set of core values, you're going to fall into what I call ethical drift, where it's little
mm,
concessions here and there, and then the next thing you know, you're really far to the left or the right of where your initial azimuth, and you're falling off course. And so the first trigger for anything to me is, like I said, less about the sales and it's more about the culture as a whole. And so it's defining those core values and then messaging that both to your customer and to your team, because that has to be constantly reiterated. What are your core values? And it doesn't have to be something that's crazy. It doesn't have to be very long. I have, a handful of words, and those are our core values. And we try to, and then every decision I make, whether it's, to chase a new, harebrained idea that I have, or a suggestion from somebody else, or an interaction with a customer, just on a customer service, interaction, it's go back to those core values every single time. And I think that that's the first thing that you have to do.
I love that. So the trigger then, define core values, the values of your company. Now, so not just your core values, but your company's values as well. If you're working for another company, go to HR, right? Figure out who maintains core values around here and figure out what those are. Because if your company is in alignment with them, they can be very, very cool differentiators as you reach out there and sell, because not every company has the same core values. They're going to value things differently. The R in trim is where we really get into our military mindset here, because now I need things to do throughout my sales process. And because core values and alignment with customers is something that starts kind of before the first conversation, continues all the way through the sale into delivery, even because if our values shift after our delivery, then hey, things start to go wonky for referrals, right? No one wants to do business with us twice if we're sold one thing, but then we get delivered something else. So if I'm going to make this a repeatable process, what are the 5 things, let's say, that you would want to make sure to do to establish alignment with a customer in the sales conversation and make sure that it continued all the way through to delivery?
So that's, I think a lot of that systems internally, right? Because it's a lot of times the sale is a lot easier than the follow through, especially on service-based businesses. You can put the window dressing on it, you can message it, you can say it, a bunch of different ways, but a lot of companies really fail on the actual fulfillment of whatever that is, whether it's the shipping of a product, or whether it's that service based of providing whatever. And so I think that having that internally, either within yourself to where you have things systematized, so it's an easy, and like simpler is always better. When I find myself getting super complicated, it is the worst. Like the foundational basics, and not straying off into too many things, trying to offer too many services. So having a simplified product that you pour into, because you can spend all the time making sure your product is right, or you can spend all your time with a lesser product and then all the time marketing and selling it. If the product's right, then
Mm.
referrals are going to come. You're going to have that exponential growth. And so building the right product and having sure you have the back end of that delivery before you're even pushing it. I think we tend to rush to try to get things to market or try to get a service out there because we're chasing that pot of gold, but we're risking the empire. And so if we can have that simpler process, that better product, and then really focus internally on to ensure that execution's happening from start to finish, and then we're following up, and then we're checking in with the customer, and we have those touch points to let them know we care. If something goes wrong, back to the core values. Our first core value at Hunt Lift Eat is integrity. If there's a mistake and it's our mistake, we own it every single time. And I'll tell the customer, hey, we screwed up. Keep that t-shirt. We sent you the wrong one. We'll send you a new one right now. And then, that follow through, I think, is so important.
Now, those are amazing steps. So first, figure out what systems are in place to establish those values with your prospects to communicate them. And those might be through social media. They might be in your initial conversations. They might be on your website. A lot of places that those could live. Number two, define how does your product or service align with those values. If you can't look at your product or service and immediately begin, drawing the lines, this is how this aligns with integrity. This is how this aligns with accountability. This is how this aligns with passion and commitment. Then if you can't see it, how are your customers going to see it? And if you can't communicate it to yourself, how are you going to communicate it in a high stress situation where there's actual revenue on the line? And then you kept coming back to this step, which is how can this be simpler? We often have a tendency as entrepreneurs, as salespeople, to overcomplicate things, especially if we're process driven, which most of us coming out of the military are. So always looking at how we can simplify it. And then you also said, define what the touch points are for you to get back in touch with your prospects and customers so that you can continue communicating those values. It's almost like, and this is something that I really want to make sure I capture for myself, everything that happens throughout the sales cycle, whether it's you sending out a purchase order, getting a quote, getting a signed contract, whatever business you're in, it's an opportunity for you to better align with your values or to communicate those values. And if we're not taking advantage of that as salespeople, then our values are not one of our key differentiators. So many of us are saying our differentiator is price, or our differentiator is quality, our differentiator is brand recognition. All those things are great, but if your values are one of yours, then hey, you should be taking every opportunity to communicate those. Is there anything else that I want to make sure I include in this system before we move on to the next piece of this process building exercise?
No, I think that covers it. And I think, and obviously we are a values driven company, not value. And
Yeah.
if whatever that core focus is, you have to always go back to it. And just like you said, and have those touch points, if it's, you know, like we do a handwritten note, that's a thank you, just to let people know we care about you so much. We're going to take the extra, a minute to write a handwritten note. And it's such a little thing that exponentially pays for itself in the long term with the relationships we build with our customers. And I think that those little things are not to be discounted. And I see it across all industries, nonprofits I've worked with, where there's just not that human interaction. And as we go more towards this automated world with AI and automations built in the back ends of the systems, those are huge levers that we should utilize and learn. But having that human interpersonal interaction and letting people know on a human level that, hey, I appreciate you. It's not lost on me, the money that you're giving me for what I'm doing. That little thing I have found compounds so much, and it's so important to who we are as a company and who I am as a person. I just wanted everybody to always be my team, even having those touch points, because it's becoming more and more rare, and it's just an easy one to do if you truly mean it. And if you don't, then you're just going to come across as fake, and I think it's going to actually hurt you in the long run. But having those touch points is really key.
So we've got the trigger element, making it repeatable. The I in trim is making this an improvable process. So I want to make sure that I continue to get better at how I communicate my values and how I align those values with the customers that I'm bringing on board, so that we don't have customers that expect, one set of values, but we're actually demonstrating another set of values. So how would I improve this over time? And you might be able to think of some examples how your company's been able to do it just in a short amount of time that you've been around. But how do I make sure that I'm continually better aligning my values with my customers?
I think it's communication, both within your organization and then with your customers. You have to get that feedback, and you've got to have really thick skin. It's no like we do. Obviously, there's a lot of military crossover to what we do. So we do AARs after every event, every big cycle of, if we're doing a sprint cycle, and we come together and, hey, where did I fail? Where did, our marketing team fail? Where did, the team fail? Like where are our failure points? And we gloss over our successes and we pat ourselves on the back, but I'm focused on failure because that's where we really learn. And so having that communication, and if we have a bad customer service interaction, let's look at it. What could we have done differently? Did they catch me on a bad day, or catch whoever was answering the emails on a bad day and we were a little more snippy than we should have been? How do we fix that? And so I think the communication, and then the constantly assessing, and it has to be, and you build that into your system. It's got to be a rhythm that's happening, because if not, it just falls off. And then you just find yourself going through the operational tempo, and you're never refining what you're doing. So there's no difference than how we do things within the military on mission planning, assessing where we failed, how we improve, and then continue forward.
Now that's awesome, man. So I love this, making it a rhythm, not just something that you do occasionally, not just something you do when you lose the biggest deal of the year, but making it a rhythm that happens regularly, almost like everybody can expect it to happen, because chances are, if you're going to stay in business, continuous improvement should be one of your values. It's funny the way that works. It kept us alive on the battlefield. It can help people out in business. The final element of this, the M in trim, is measuring this. Now, for a values-driven company, not a value-driven company, my guess is your immediate measurement is not top-line revenue. Because like you said, you could sell 1,000 cheap things and have a lot of great revenue, but one-off sales and a lot of customer complaints and nobody returning for business. So what would you measure in your company or on your team to make sure that you are aligning with your customers' values?
Yeah, measurement's really key, and you have to understand what you're measuring. I think that's really important, because a lot of what we want as our key performance indicators as a young entrepreneur is I think I found it to be very ego driven. So you want to see top line, you want to see bottom line, you want to see these big numbers, and going back to that core focus and not chasing the pot of gold. It's to define within your value set what actually matters. And so one of the things I look at is, customer service interactions. How many of these were resolved in a positive manner? The feedback we're getting, the positive reviews. That I care more about that than I do necessarily the overall sales. Obviously, sales matters, and it's something we look at, and we have to make sure that the dollars we're putting into marketing are coming back with a good ROAS and all that stuff. But the interactions, and then also the feedback from the team, right? So how am I measuring? What's the satisfaction level? Are we at this point of I've been driving too hard and everybody's starting to hit that tracer burnout? Or, is everybody still motivated and ready to go? And so it's for me, I'm not a numbers guy. I actually just brought in a new guy to be that numbers guy and to tell me no. I'm a big gut feel, but interpersonal interaction, that's my strength. So the numbers matter. And I was just saying this on a call yesterday to the team. My gut has gotten us this far. For us to get to the next phase of our business growth, we do have to start looking at the numbers and making decisions based off data and analytics. But I think when you're building the overall culture and defining those values of your company, it's less about just the revenue, especially early on. It's about what you're building and how you're interacting and building relationships with the customers. And so using the tools that you have, feedback surveys, the customer service reviews, social media interactions, and the content you're creating, there's a bunch of little indicators that you can look there to then pull together in aggregate to really see how the value that you're providing and what that feedback's coming back in from your community.
So a lot of organizations will have their salespeople, with KPIs on calls out, activity, revenue made. But it sounds like you're advocating that we need to identify what the KPIs are for our values as well. How do we know that we're in integrity? How do we know that we are customer focused and responsive? Because that'll list out through social media, through our interactions, through our return rate, through the customer service that we have with our people if there's an issue. So that's amazing to begin to measure things that aren't just top or bottom line, but the things that actually demonstrate we're living by our values. So Luke, this has been an amazing end-to-end sales system that any entrepreneur, any business person, any salesperson can use to make sure that they're taking their personal values and their company values and aligning them throughout the sales process with their customer. For the folks that want to get deeper into your world with Hunt, Lift, Eat, if they want to support a veteran-owned company, they want to learn about you and the programs that you have, where do they go? What do they do? How do we get deeper in your world, sir?
Absolutely. If you want to check out our website, it's huntlifteat.com. You can go to the Our Team tab, and that will get you plugged into our community if that's something you're interested in. We have our own app that we launched last year. We're constantly iterating, making it better. Obviously, we have our apparel. We have a military discount. Just reach out to us if you guys are interested in any of that. I'll do a little bit of selling here. But and then you can follow us on social media. It's at Hunt Lift Eat Official on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We just launched our YouTube channel. So if you're into hunting content, we're really ramping that side of the house up. It's been a big initiative of ours here recently. But yeah, we'd love to have you guys come out. And we're on the team too with these mindset calls. I love these discussions, this kind of stuff. And having some experienced entrepreneurs and businessmen and salesmen and women, we want that diverse part of our community. The glue is the hunting and the fitness, but we want all these different backgrounds and, to share lessons learned to make us all better people.
Outstanding, sir. Well, for everybody catching this on the live stream on YouTube, make sure you're subscribing to that YouTube channel, Bulletproof Selling or Battlefield Selling. We're going under a couple names now. And if you're listening to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, leave us a review and let other salespeople know. Hope no longer has to be part of their sales strategy. Well, Luke, thanks so much for the service to our country, sir. I know you're going to have a great time as an entrepreneur on the civilian side. And thanks for giving back to the sales community today as well, helping them understand how to take the values that we individually carry and make sure they're translating through to the business. Let's get out there and let's make selling bulletproof.
Appreciate it, Sean. Thank you so much for having me.